Jason hadn't even finished unpacking the last of his moving boxes when the first envelope showed up. No stamp, no return address. Just a plain white paper slid under his door late at night. Notice of violation, excessive noise after quiet hours. Jason stared at it, confused. He'd only been in the house for 10 days. No parties, no loud music. The only sound coming from his place was the occasional TV show or the clinking of dishes while he organized the kitchen. But apparently, someone believed he was disturbing the peace. He crumpled the letter and dropped it in the trash, assuming it was a mistake or some overzealous neighbor. But by the next morning, 3 different neighbors had warned him. Careful. One of them whispered while walking his dog. Karen's watching. Jason turned. Karen, the man tilted his head toward a cream-colored house across the cul-de-sac, where a woman stood at the edge of her porch, arms crossed, eyes locked on Jason like a hawk, zeroing in on prey. She runs the HOA. The man continued quietly. Or rather, she is the HOA. Be polite, keep your head down, and maybe she won't file another complaint. Jason gave her a neighborly wave. Karen didn't respond. By the next day, the second notice came. This one claimed he had operated machinery in violation of community rules. The only noise Jason had made that day was vacuuming the living room. Now it didn't feel like a misunderstanding. It felt like a setup. He brought the notice to the HOA office, which turned out to be a repurposed bedroom inside Karen's own house. A small metal sign on her front lawn read, HOA office hours, 8 to 10 a.m., Mon Wed. Jason knocked. No answer. He left the paper in the mail slot. That night, a new camera appeared mounted on a pole just outside Karen's front yard, pointed suspiciously toward Jason's driveway. All right, he muttered, if you want to play that game. Jason bought and installed a discreet ring camera that faced his front porch and the street. He didn't want a war. He just wanted proof that he wasn't the one causing problems. 2 nights later, his camera buzzed at 2:13 a.m. Movement detected. When he checked the recording the next morning, Jason sat frozen at his kitchen table. The footage showed a woman, tall blonde, bathrobe fluttering in the wind, stepping silently across his porch. She crouched down, placed something near the doormat, and then pulled out her phone. She took pictures of his door, his porch, his lights. Then she turned and disappeared into the night. It was Karen. She wasn't reporting noise, she was building a case. But for what? Jason downloaded the footage, emailed it to the HOA's official inbox, and waited no reply. Not even an acknowledgement. That's when something inside Jason shifted. This wasn't just about noise. This was bigger, calculated. Karen wasn't just harassing him, she was hiding something. And anyone who got too close got a violation. He didn't know it yet, but Karen had chosen the wrong neighbor this time. Jason opened his laptop and started documenting everything. If the HOA wouldn't listen, the internet would. And if Karen had secrets, he was going to find every last one. Jason couldn't shake the image of Karen lurking on his porch at 2 in the morning. He had rewatched the footage at least a dozen times, slowing it down, zooming in. She wasn't just snooping, she was staging something. She had placed a small black object just below his window. What it was, he couldn't tell, but when the camera caught her turning back to take photos, the picture became clear. She was building a paper trail, one she could twist into more fake violations. The next morning, another notice appeared in his mailbox. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten in neat cursive. If you cannot respect the community's standards, perhaps this is not the neighborhood for you. Final warning. Enforcement imminent. Jason's hands clenched the paper. His jaw tightened. The message was clear. It wasn't just a warning. It was a threat. By now, he was certain. Karen was not just a nosy neighbor with too much time. She was orchestrating something much bigger. And his quiet resistance had painted a target on his back. He decided to take a different approach. That night, Jason parked his car 3 houses down and walked back under cover of darkness. He didn't turn on any lights. Instead, he positioned himself behind a large hedge across from Karen's house, camera in hand. Phone ready. At exactly 2:03 a.m. Movement. Karen's garage door creaked open silently, but not enough to avoid detection. From the shadows, Jason watched in stunned silence. Inside the garage was a strange glow, an eerie blue light pulsing from within. What shocked him most wasn't the light, though. It was the sight of 3 women, dressed in all black, entering through the side gate. Each carried a small black bag. They disappeared into the garage. Without a word, Jason lifted his phone and snapped several pictures. He could hear something humming inside almost like industrial fans. Mixed with that were muffled voices, clanking, and a low mechanical buzz. It wasn't a crafting circle, and it definitely wasn't HOA work. Jason crept closer, slipping between parked cars and hedges. Peeking through the slight crack in the garage, he saw it. Metal shelving stacked with boxes, power cords running everywhere, and what looked like sealed containers, some labeled with unfamiliar chemical names. And those black bags the women brought in, now being unloaded with tiny bottles, jars, and printed labels. Was she running a lab? Jason backed away slowly, not daring to get caught. He returned home, heart racing, hands sweating. The next morning, he brought his findings to the HOA board's contact email, again. This time, he included high-resolution photos, video timestamps, and a note. This is not about noise. This is about what Karen is hiding. You need to act. Still silence. It didn't make sense. How could no one else see what she was doing? Later that evening, Jason's doorbell rang. He checked his camera first. There was no one at the door, but someone had left another envelope. Inside it was a printed copy of a neighborhood rulebook, with one line underlined in red: unauthorized surveillance of private properties will not be tolerated. Jason laughed under his breath. Karen was scared now, and that meant he was getting close. But he also knew he couldn't take her down alone. That's when fate stepped in. As he scrolled through the neighborhood Facebook group, he noticed a name from earlier conversations, a man named Walt, retired, quiet, and a former HOA board member. Jason sent him a private message. You ever have problems with Karen? I think she's hiding something serious. Walt replied just 1 minute later. Jason met Walt the next day at a quiet park just outside the neighborhood, a place where HOA eyes wouldn't be watching. Walt was older, maybe late 60s, with a slow, cautious gait and eyes that seemed to carry years of buried frustration. You don't know how long I've waited for someone to call her out, Walt said without any small talk. Jason leaned forward. So you believe me? Walt gave a bitter laugh. Believe you? I tried to expose her last year, got voted off the board for it. Karen made sure I looked unstable, said I was losing touch. All because I questioned where HOA dues were really going and why there were shipments arriving at her house every Tuesday like clockwork. Jason's mind reeled. Shipments. Walt nodded. Unmarked boxes. Large. I followed a delivery truck once straight from a warehouse that doesn't exist on any business registry. Then Walt pulled out a battered manila folder. Inside were printed screenshots, old emails, and grainy photographs of Karen's garage from nearly a year ago. I kept digging, even after they kicked me off the board. But I couldn't get hard proof. She's careful, smart. She keeps everything off the books. Jason thumbed through the pages, stunned. Why didn't you go to the police? I tried. They said it was a civil matter unless I could prove something criminal. But the HOA backed her. They always do. I'm just a bitter retiree to them. Jason frowned. She's still up to it. I have video footage. Photos. She's running some kind of illegal product business. Possibly chemicals, maybe cosmetics. Late night shipments, workers in black, garage lights at 2 a.m. I caught it all on camera. Walt looked both relieved and alarmed. Then we're running out of time. She knows you're watching. As if on cue, Jason's phone buzzed. An email from the HOA. You are officially under investigation for community violations and stalking. Your behavior has been documented. Cease all unsanctioned surveillance or face legal action. Jason's jaw tightened. She's flipping it. Turning the board against me like she did to you. Walt nodded grimly. That's what she does. Anyone who questions her gets buried in red tape. Violations. Intimidation. Fines until they leave. Jason closed the folder. Then we have to hit back hard and publicly. Walt raised an eyebrow. You're thinking the next board meeting. Jason nodded. I've got video, timestamps, screenshots. If we show it all at once, make it undeniable, we might force their hand. Walt looked around, checking over his shoulder. You better be careful. Karen's not above doing things quietly. 2 families left this neighborhood mid-lease after she harassed them. 1 woman had a breakdown. Karen's like poison. Jason clenched his fists. She picked the wrong person this time. They shook hands and parted ways, each carrying a silent weight. But as Jason walked back to his car, he noticed a sedan idling across the street. Tinted windows, no license plate in front. He waited. The car didn't move. He pulled out his phone and snapped a picture just in case. That night, as Jason loaded new files into a backup drive, he noticed something strange. His internet was acting up. He couldn't access his cameras remotely. He restarted his router — nothing. Then he checked his doorbell cam's last recording. 2:44 a.m. The same sedan, parked right in front of his driveway. Headlights off. Someone got out for exactly 30 seconds, walked toward his porch, the feed cut to black. Jason's hands trembled. This wasn't paranoia anymore. It was a warning. Jason didn't sleep that night. Not because he wasn't tired, but because every creak of the house, every flicker of a streetlight outside, felt like a test of nerves. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at the frozen frame from his doorbell cam. The figure walking toward his porch, just before the feed cut out. They had tampered with it. That was no coincidence. By sunrise, Jason had made a decision. He wasn't waiting anymore. If Karen wanted him to stop snooping, it meant he was dangerously close to the truth, and if she had someone bold enough to approach his house under cover of night, she was more than just an HOA tyrant. She was something else entirely. By noon, Walt texted him, "Meet me at 3. I found something." They met again in the park. This time sitting inside Walt's old Ford truck, engine running, radio playing low to drown out any mics. "I got into the HOA's digital archive," Walt said, passing Jason a USB stick. "Karen's been funneling thousands in equipment reimbursements and emergency maintenance funds, but there's no paper trail, no receipts, nothing matching the work." Jason's eyes widened. "She's laundering HOA funds." "Possibly. But I also found something worse. She applied for a hazardous materials license 3 years ago. It was denied. The address on the application. Her house." Jason took a deep breath. "That's it. That's what she's doing. That's what the garage is hiding." Walt nodded slowly. "I've got a plan. Tomorrow night, she leaves for her usual Thursday delivery run. Gone for 2 hours. That's our window." Jason didn't hesitate. "Let's do it." The next night, the street was calm. Jason sat in his darkened living room, watching Karen's driveway. At exactly 9:06 p.m., her SUV backed out, turned left, and vanished down the hill. Walt was already waiting 2 blocks away in a borrowed car with tinted windows. They approached Karen's house like thieves in the night, gloved, hooded, silent. Walt picked the side gate lock. "Used to be a locksmith," he muttered. "Old hands, still remember." The backyard was oddly quiet. Too clean. Not a leaf out of place. The garage door had no keypad, just a keyhole and a rusty handle. Jason slipped the lockpick in and turned. It clicked. The door groaned open. Inside, the blue glow bathed everything in a cold, sterile light. Rows of workbenches lined the walls, covered in tiny plastic containers, glass vials, mixing machines, and labels for skin creams and facial serums with FDA approval. But the real shock was at the back. A mini manufacturing setup complete with bottling machines and branded packaging. Boxers labeled for overseas shipping. A rack full of fake invoices. Stacks of counterfeit high-end cosmetic products. Jason took photos of everything. Walt recorded video on his phone. Then they heard footsteps. Not from the driveway, from inside the house. Jason froze. "She's back early." Walt peeked through a crack in the door. "That's not her car. Someone else." A flashlight. Beams swept through the house. Jason and Walt ducked, heartbeats thudding in their ears. A man entered the garage with a duffel bag. He didn't even flinch when he saw the setup. He walked straight to the back shelves and began loading bottles into his bag. Jason whispered, "She's got partners." Walt gritted his teeth. "No, she's got a distribution ring." Jason raised his phone and captured the man's face. Just then, the man turned toward them, his eyes locking straight onto Jason's lens. A pause. Then the man bolted Jason and Walt didn't stick around. They slipped out the side gate and sprinted through backyards until they reached Walt's car. They didn't talk on the way back. They didn't need to. They had seen enough. Jason knew the retaliation would be fast, but even he underestimated how far Karen would go. By the next morning, he was served a formal cease and desist from the HOA. The letter accused him of trespassing, harassment, and malicious defamation of a board member. It was printed on HOA letterhead, signed by Karen herself, and hand-delivered by a uniformed private security officer who wouldn't even make eye contact. Walt received one too. His came with a bill $4,350 in unpaid fines. For past violations he didn't even know existed. Jason felt the pressure mounting, but he was ready. He hadn't just taken photos the night before. He had uploaded everything: videos, screenshots, documents to a secure cloud folder, with a scheduled release trigger. If anything happened to him, the files would go public. But Karen was smart. She didn't come at him directly. She came at his job. That afternoon, Jason's manager called him in. "Hey, Jason," she said carefully. "We got an anonymous email from someone claiming you've been stalking women in your neighborhood. There's a whole post going around with your photo, too." Jason sat up straight. "Excuse me." She turned her screen toward him. There, it was his face, screen captured from his own doorbell footage, with a caption, "Beware. This man harasses women at night." Posted in a local Facebook group with over 12,000 members. "She's trying to destroy me," Jason said under his breath. "She's actually framing me." To make matters worse, comments were piling up. Neighbors speculating, some defending him, others piling on with vague complaints like "I always felt something was off about him," or "He walks around late at night, kinda sketchy." It didn't matter that none of it was true. In today's world, perception was punishment. Jason stared at the screen. "I have proof. She's running an illegal business from her garage: counterfeit cosmetics, unlicensed chemicals, even black market distribution. And she's turning the whole neighborhood against me." His manager leaned back. "Then prove it, because right now, HR's involved." That was the final straw. Jason called Walt. "I'm done playing nice." Walt was ready. "Good. Then let's take it all to the next board meeting. Show everything. Blow it wide open." Jason agreed, but first he made a backup plan. He contacted a local investigative journalist he followed online, someone with a reputation for exposing corrupt small-town politics and shady HOA dealings. He sent her a detailed email with images, video, and a simple subject line: "HOA cover-up and a counterfeit ring need to talk." She replied in 6 minutes. "Meet tomorrow. I'm bringing a camera." That night, as Jason double-checked his files, an alert flashed across his phone: his home security system had been disabled. He rushed outside. His front cameras were intact, but the Wi-Fi router had been unplugged. Someone had physically cut the cord and left it dangling from the side of the box. On the driveway, something else, another envelope. Inside, a single typed line: "Some things are better left alone." Jason didn't flinch. Not this time. He walked inside, fired up his laptop, and began preparing a full presentation for the HOA board meeting. Every violation, every payment trail, every shipment. He labeled each folder, numbered every file, and rehearsed every line. Walt would handle the finances. Jason would show the video. And the reporter. She'd be sitting quietly in the back with a concealed mic and camera. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about taking down a monster hiding behind HOA rules and phony smiles. The HOA board meeting was set for 7 p.m. sharp in the neighborhood's clubhouse, a renovated garage that usually hosted garden parties and bake sales. But tonight, it buzzed with tension. Nearly half the community had shown up, whispering, eyeing Jason like he was either a whistleblower or a criminal. There was no in-between anymore. Jason arrived 5 minutes early, Walt right behind him. The air smelled like potpourri and nervous sweat. Karen sat at the front of the room, dressed in her usual crisp white blazer, lips pursed, flanked by her loyal board members. She locked eyes with Jason, smiled. It wasn't friendly, it was a warning. He spotted the reporter in the back, Loki, camera tucked in her tote, voice recorder on her lap. She gave a small nod. The room quieted as Karen tapped her pen on the table. "This meeting will address several member complaints and clarify recent rumors regarding our board's operations. I ask that we all remain respectful." Jason raised his hand before she could go further. "I have evidence I'd like to present." Karen didn't even look up. "We'll take public comments at the end." "I won't wait until then," Jason said firmly. "Because what I have to say concerns the safety, finances, and legal liability of every homeowner in this room." The crowd murmured. A few phones were already filming. Karen's smile vanished. "Sit down," she snapped. Walt stood. "You're scared, Karen, that's why you don't want this shown." Jason walked to the projector, plugged in his USB, and clicked the first folder. "Let's talk about HOA dues." This file shows repeated transfers labeled as equipment and maintenance, but there's no corresponding receipts, work orders, or vendor names. The totals: over $20,000 in the last year alone. Gasps. Karen's face twitched. Fabricated. Jason clicked again. The screen showed footage from Karen's garage, rows of unmarked bottles, labeling equipment, sealed packages. This is what Karen's been doing after hours. An illegal manufacturing operation using unapproved chemicals, products being shipped and sold online. None of it disclosed. No safety inspections, no permits. Someone shouted from the back, "My daughter bought one of those." She broke out, in hives. Karen stood abruptly. "This is illegal. You can't film inside my house." Jason turned to her. "This footage was taken from outside your property. And before you talk about legality, let me show you what showed up on my doorstep." At 2:44 a.m., he played the clip of the man entering her garage, the one Karen never mentioned. "That's not me," she barked. Walt stepped forward. "We traced that man's license plate to a P.O. box in another state. He's not a neighbor, he's part of her supply chain." Now the crowd was stirring. Karen's voice rose. "This is a setup. You're harassing me, all of you." One of the board members, Tome, who had always looked uneasy, finally spoke up. "Karen, we've asked for those financial logs for months. You always said they were being audited. Were you lying to us?" Karen's eyes darted around the room. "This is defamation. If you don't shut this down, I'll sue." Jason clicked one final time. The screen displayed the denied hazmat application. Karen's name, her home address. 3 years ago, she tried to register this operation and was denied. She went ahead anyway. "That's a felony." Karen lunged forward, yanking the USB from the projector. "This meeting is over." But the damage was done. Phones were recording. Voices were rising. Questions were flying. Walt leaned into the mic. "I motion to suspend Karen pending an emergency board review." Tom seconded it immediately. Karen turned and stormed out the back door, slamming it so hard the cheap frame rattled. Someone in the crowd clapped. The reporter, in the back, slowly stood and followed her out, already dialing her editor. Jason took a long breath, heart still pounding. But as the crowd buzzed, someone tapped him on the shoulder. A quiet man in a city uniform. "Mr. Jameson?" he asked. "I'm with the County Code Enforcement Office. We've been watching this neighborhood a while. Can we talk?" Jason followed the code enforcement officer out of the clubhouse and into the cooling night air. Flashing blue and white lights lit up the street in Pulse's 3 county vehicles. A white van marked with a hazmat insignia, and an unmarked sedan with 2 serious-looking men in suits inside. What is this?" Jason asked, trying to keep up as the officer walked briskly toward Karen's house. The man gave him a tight nod. "We've been investigating reports of unlicensed chemical distribution tied to several online storefronts. Your footage. That blew the lid off it. Your name's on the original tip, so technically, you just triggered a full-scale enforcement raid." Jason didn't know what to say. A second later, the officers breached Karen's garage. They didn't even need to break the door. One of the agents produced a key. Jason blinked. "Wait, how'd you from her storage unit?" The officer replied. "We got a warrant this morning." He watched, breathless, as a team in hazmat suits entered the garage. Within minutes, they started pulling boxers, hundreds of them each, one labeled with international shipping codes and addresses across the country. Inside, thousands of cosmetic bottles, skin creams, unmarked tinctures, and entire pallets of unlabeled glass containers. A county health official approached, shaking her head. No safety ventilation. No proper storage. She had ethanol and acetone containers, stacked next to heating units. This was a bomb waiting to happen. But that wasn't the worst of it. From the back of the garage, one of the agents emerged, holding a laptop and a heavy, dust-covered filing box. They brought it to the unmarked car. One of the men in suits, the one who hadn't spoken yet, opened the box, and began thumbing through the papers. After several moments, he glanced up. "You said her name is Karen M. Whitlow, correct?" Jason nodded. "Yeah." The man squinted at the folder. "Then explain this. There are 10 HOA accounts under her name, and 3 different social security numbers." Jason froze. "What?" "Not just that, we're seeing signatures of former board members on documents that don't line up. Either they were forged, or someone used dead accounts to siphon HOA funds." Jason turned to Walt, who had just arrived, panting from the walk. She wasn't just running a business, she was laundering money. Walt's eyes widened. That's why she always fought audits. She created shell accounts under fake board members. Every fine she issued, every emergency repair, was a way to filter cash out of the A second agent approached the lead officer. "Sir, we found a second laptop hidden under the workbench. It's encrypted, but it looks like remote access was attempted within the last hour." "Which means," the officer said, "someone else is in on this and they know we're here." Suddenly, the van's radio squawked. "Dispatch to Unit 3. Suspect Karen Whitlow sighted at 9th and Baker heading eastbound in a silver Lexus. Plate Bravo 905. Jason's stomach dropped. She ran. Walt cursed under his breath. She knew it was coming. She's going to burn every file she can before they catch her. But it was too late. The damage had been done by morning. The neighborhood was crawling with reporters. A full statement from the county was released. An HOA leader has been implicated in a multi-state counterfeit goods scheme and possible financial crimes including identity fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. The HOA account was frozen. Karen's house was seized. Every fine she'd ever issued declared void. And the community furious. But Jason wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because when he got home and opened his email, he found something strange. An anonymous message. Karen wasn't working alone. Look deeper. Start with the 2017 bylaws change. And ask yourself, why did the original HOA treasurer disappear without a trace? Jason's blood ran cold. Jason stared at the anonymous email for a long moment, the cursor blinking beneath the cryptic final line. Why did the original HOA treasurer disappear without a trace? He had no idea who sent it, but one thing was clear. Karen was just the tip of something much darker. He pulled out the old HOA folder Walt had given him, flipping past the financial reports, violation templates, and legal memos until he found a faded sheet labeled HOA Bylaw Revisions, -2017. It seemed routine on the surface, minor changes to maintenance protocols and voting rules. But one line stood out. In the event of sudden board vacancies, temporary decision-making authority is granted to the standing president without need for a quorum vote. Jason narrowed his eyes. That meant if someone like Karen lost her treasurer or other board members, she could assume full control of HOA finances without oversight. He grabbed his phone and called. "Walt, do you remember who the original treasurer was back in 2017? There was a long pause. "Yeah, her name was Ruth Calhoun," Walt said. "She was honest, tough. She clashed with Karen over budget issues, and then one day poof, gone." Jason sat upright. "Gone, how?" "She said she was moving to be near her grandkids, but no one ever saw her pack. No garage sale, no moving van, nothing. One day she just disappeared. Karen said she resigned quietly and left a note." Jason's instincts screamed. He started digging public records, property sales, court filings. And there it was. Ruth Calhoun's house hadn't been sold. It had been foreclosed and transferred directly to a shell LLC tied to Karen's address. Which meant, Karen didn't just force Ruth out, she might have stolen her house, her position, and possibly her identity. Jason called the local county records office, posing as a journalist. "Can I get a death certificate or relocation filing for a Ruth Calhoun?" Former HOA board member, Dois Mui Dezasechi, the clerk, tapped for a moment. "Sorry, nothing by that name. No recorded move-outs, no death either. But I do see a civil dispute filed, sealed by court order." Sealed. Jason hung up and rubbed his forehead. This wasn't just a crooked board. It was a cover-up going back years. The next day, the reporter he'd partnered with published her piece, HOA Queenpin Exposed, The Double Life of Karen Whitlow. It blew up. News stations picked it up. Investigators followed the money trail. But buried in the final paragraph of the article was a line that caught everyone's attention. Investigators are now reviewing additional allegations of identity misuse and suspicious transfers tied to former board members, including one Ruth Calhoun still missing after 6 years. That was the beginning of the end. Within a week, the HOA was dismantled. The county took over temporary governance. Every homeowner's records were being audited, and Jason, he was cleared of all accusations. The company that nearly fired him offered a public apology. Neighbors who once looked at him with suspicion now waved and thanked him. But it wasn't over. 2 weeks later, Jason got another envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo. A woman, wrinkled, gray-haired, standing outside a diner in another state. Behind her, a man in a baseball cap, Corin's delivery guy. On the back of the photo, one sentence, Ruth's alive. She's watching, but not everyone wants her found. Jason felt a chill crawl up his spine. The truth had been dragged into the light. But shadows still stretched across the edges of the neighborhood. Karen may have fallen, but the network she built was still out there, silent, waiting.